Hello students, welcome to this session which is autoimmune diseases and uveitis part 2. In part 1, we talked about the cells of the immune system, their structure, their function and the normal immune mechanisms. In order to have a healthy individual, it is very important that your immune system is able to distinguish between a foreign antigen and a self-antigen. And this is an actual learning process. And by this, they develop what is called a tolerance. By that, what you mean is they recognize self-antigen, but they do not mount an immune response against it. So in this session, we are going to learn how the immune system differentiates self from non-self and the mechanisms of autoimmunity, how it can go wrong. We're also going to look at autoimmune versus autoinflammatory diseases. So before we actually look at how the tolerance is developed, let's go back to some of the basics. So we're going to talk about major histocompatibility complex molecules. So in part 1, we have seen how important these molecules are in adaptive immunity. So for a T cell to recognize an antigen, the antigen has to be combined with the appropriate MHC molecule and presented to the T cell via antigen-presenting cells. So these molecules, they are transmembrane glycoproteins and they are present in all nucleated cells. They are not unique to human beings. They are seen in all vertebrates. In human beings, they are also called human leukocyte antigens. So these molecules came first into attention because of its role in transplant compatibility, hence the name major histocompatibility complex molecules. Now, in addition to its role in adaptive immunity, they also play a huge role in immune tolerance. These molecules are actually coded by a group of genes in the short arm of chromosome 6 in human beings. They're also called the human leukocyte antigen gene. So if this is the short arm of chromosome 6, you have gene A, B, and C coding for class 1 MHC molecule. And you have DP, DQ, and DR, which codes for class 2 MHC molecule. Now let's see how they are different in their structure and function. So the class 1 molecules are located in all nucleated cells, but the class 2 molecules are seen in antigen-presenting cells like the dendritic cells, macrophages, and the B cells. We already talked about the different regions of coding. The class 1 is coded by HLA A, B, and C, and the class 2 by DR, DQ, and DP. So let's look at the difference in the structure of the class 1 and class 2 MHC molecule. So here is a class 1 MHC molecule. It's composed of a large alpha chain and a much smaller beta microglobulin chain. And this is where the antigen peptide binds, and this is composed of alpha 2 and alpha 1 domains. On the other hand, the class 2 MHC molecule is composed of an alpha and beta chain, which are of similar size. And the peptide antigen binding site is composed of alpha 1 and beta 1 domains. So let's go back and brush the role of MHC molecule in antigen presenting to the T cell. So here we have a cytotoxic T cell, which is CD8 positive, and it requires the antigen to be presented coupled with a class 1 MHC molecule. The antigen presenting cell in this case presents an antigen which is endogenous. It means it originated within the cell. It could be a self antigen or it could be from a microbe which has been present inside the cell. So this antigen is processed, is coupled with class 1 MHC molecule, and the T cell receptor recognizes it. On the other hand, you have a helper T cell here, which is CD4 positive. So in this case, the antigen arises from outside. It is exogenous. It's taken inside the antigen processing cell. It's broken down and coupled with a class 2 MHC molecule and presented to the helper T cell, resulting in its activation. So this table actually lays down the difference in the function of MHC1 and MHC2. Like I said, MHC1 presents endogenous antigens, MHC2 presents exogenous antigens, and MHC1 presents antigen to CD8 positive cytotoxic T cells. MHC2 will present it to helper T cells, which are CD4 positive. So the end result of this MHC1 cytotoxic T cell interaction is that it targets the cell for destruction. On the other hand, the interaction between class 2 MHC molecule and the CD4 cell will result in antibody production, and it brings more immune cells to the area of infection. Now with this background, let us move on to the mechanism of immunological tolerance. What do you mean by immunological tolerance? It's a mechanism by which an immunocompetent organism fails to mount immune response to an antigen. So remember that it's not ignorance. It's not that they don't recognize the self-antigen. They do recognize it, but they do not attack it. So there are two mechanisms by which the tolerance develops. You have a central tolerance and a peripheral tolerance. So let us look at the mechanism by which central tolerance develops. You know that the T and the B cells, they develop in the bone marrow. From there, the developing T cells will move to the thymus for their final maturation. But the B cells will continue in the bone marrow for their final maturation. Now, what you need to understand is that both the T cells and the B cells have very specific receptors. So in T cell, you have the T cell receptor, and the B cell has the B cell receptor. And the immune system is capable of producing infinite variety of lymphocytes which can react to any antigen. And it does this before even the lymphocytes are exposed to the antigen. So the result of this is that inevitably you have lymphocytes which can react to self-antigens. Okay? So they normally develop. So these lymphocytes are called self-reactive or autoreactive antigens. Now, how does the immune system train these self-reactive lymphocytes? So in the case of the T cells which are developing in the thymus, they have a 3-step process to train them to distinguish self from non-self antigen. So what happens is, in the thymus, the T cells are exposed to a self-antigen coupled with a self-MHC molecule. Okay. Now, 3 things can happen when the T cell is exposed to this combination. The first one is that they fail to bind to it. They fail to recognize it. The second possibility is that they bind very strongly. They're very strongly attracted to it. Okay? And the third is they bind, but in a moderate fashion. Now let's look at the implication of the three possibilities. So the first one is where they fail to bind to the self-antigen MHC molecule. This is dangerous because these T cells can then move into the circulation, and because they fail to recognize self-antigen, go on to attack the host cells. So T cells undergo clonal deletion by a process called apoptosis. The second option is that they bind very strongly. They're strongly attracted to self-antigen MHC complex. Now this again is dangerous, and these set of cells also undergo clonal deletion by what is called a negative selection. But the cells which have a moderate affinity, they are positively selected, differentiate, and they are allowed to mature. Okay, so this is the mechanism by which the T cells are taught to differentiate cell from non-cell in the thymus. A similar process happens in the bone marrow for the B cells. So unlike the T cells, the B cells does not require a MHC molecule to bind to the antigen. The antigen can directly bind to the B cell receptor. So if the B cell receptor is attracted or binds very strongly to self-antigen, again they can be deleted or destroyed by apoptosis. But the B cells also have another mechanism to salvage this autoreactive cells. So the B cell receptors can undergo rearrangement. They can be remodeled in an effort to try and make them less binding or to reduce their affinity for self-antigens. If that succeeds, the cell is then allowed to survive and mature. But if the remodeling doesn't work and the cell continues to be autoreactive, it is again destroyed by apoptosis. Now the central tolerance is not perfect. It doesn't always manage to keep out self-reactive T lymphocytes or B lymphocytes. So you have a second mechanism to deal with them. It's called the peripheral tolerance. The peripheral in this case refers to the secondary lymphoid organ, namely the spleen and the lymphoid tissue. So here there are several mechanisms by which the matured T or B lymphocytes are prevented from getting activated. These are autoreactive T cells or B cells. To understand this, we have to go back to the activation of a T lymphocyte when exposed to a foreign antigen. Okay. So imagine there is an infection or an injury. You have a microbe. What happens is the antigen presenting cells will take up the microbe and it's broken down, and a part of it is coupled with the MHC molecule to be displayed to the T cell. In addition to this, when there is an injury or infection, there are also other danger signals which are produced either by the microbe or by the damaged tissue that will result in the formation of what is called a co-stimulatory receptor on the antigen presenting cells. Okay. Now, the antigen presenting cells, when they encounter the appropriate T cell, they bind. This is the first step in the activation of the T cell, but that is not enough for a complete activation. The second step involves a binding of the co-stimulatory receptors of the antigen presenting cell and the T cell. So that is your second signal. And then you get a third signal in the form of release of cytokines. So only when all this is complete, the T cell gets activated and the immune system is activated. Now let's consider that there is no injury or infection. You have self-antigens, okay? They may be produced, shed by normal cells, or as the cell dies, part of it generates self-antigens. Now this is also taken up by the antigen-presenting cells, okay? The antigens. But remember, in this situation, there is no infection or injury, so there is no danger signals, and the antigen-presenting cell does not develop a co-stimulatory receptor. So this is a very important difference. Now the antigen presenting cell along with the self antigen, which is coupled to the MHC molecule, presents it to the T cell, right? So the T cell binds to it, recognizes it, binds to it. But what is lacking is the second signal, which is required for activation is not there. The co-stimulatory signal is not there. And therefore the T cell does not get activated. It can either undergo what is called a clonal deletion by apoptosis, or it fails to get activated, a phenomenon which is called anergy. There are other mechanisms by which autoimmune processes are curtailed or contained in the periphery, and these include what is called immune deviation, 2 is immune privilege, 3 is the presence of immunosuppressive cytokines, and finally the presence of T regulatory cells. Now, having discussed the mechanism of central and peripheral tolerance, let us look at the way this mechanism fails, resulting in what is called autoimmune diseases. Obviously, if the central or the peripheral tolerance is faulty, you're going to get a lot of autoreactive T cells or B cells, resulting in autoimmune diseases. Similarly, a genetic susceptibility or mutation can also predispose to autoimmune diseases. Very common example is the HLA associations. The other mechanisms include molecular mimicry, exposure of sequestrated antigen, and polyclonal lymphocyte activation. Now let's look at some of the mechanisms by which the immune system can be tricked into attacking the host tissue. The first of which is molecular mimicry. So in this case, the invading microbe has an antigen which is presented to the T cell. But the problem here is this antigen on the microbe is very similar to the antigens in the host tissue. So the activated T cell or the antibodies will go and mistakenly attack the normal host tissue. A classic example of this is the rheumatic heart disease, where the streptococcal antigen shares similarity with the heart muscle called the myosin. So you have what is called a cross reaction resulting in pathology. The second mechanism is when an antigen which was hidden or sequestered is suddenly exposed to the immune system. Okay, so there are certain areas in the body which have what is called an immune privilege. Okay, a classical example is the eye, the other sides are the brain and the testes. Now, what gives these organs immune privilege is that they may have limited blood supply. For example, the lens and the cornea has no blood supply. They also have a strong blood ocular barrier. Okay, and they have very little lymphatic drainage under normal conditions. So the result of this is that the antigens in the eye is not normally exposed to the immune cells. Now suppose you have an injury to one eye. What happens is the ocular antigens now enter the lymphatics. Now they encounter the T cells which have never been exposed to this antigen before. They're coming across it for the first time, and because of that they think it is a foreign antigen and mounts an immune response against it. Now the problem is it's not just the injured eye, even the other eye's antigens will be attacked by this self-reactive T lymphocyte, resulting in sympathetic ophthalmia. Now let's look at polyclonal B lymphocyte activation. Okay? So normally both the B lymphocyte and the T lymphocyte is activated in a very controlled, very specific manner. But sometimes certain bacterial products, example the Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, and some of the gram-negative bacteria can cause a non-specific polyclonal activation of B cells. When this happens, suppose an autoreactive B cell also gets activated, you get production of a lot of autoantibodies which will attack the healthy host tissue. So similar to the B cells, sometimes the T cells also can be activated in a polyclonal fashion by what is called a superantigen. The examples of superantigens are the toxic shock syndrome toxin, which is produced by Staphylococcus, and the streptococcal pyrogenic exotoxin. Now, to understand what a superantigen does, let's go back to a normal antigen presentation to a T cell. So normally what happens is, if the antigen presenting cell encounters a microbe, takes it up, degrades it, and this antigen is attached to the class 2 MHC molecule. So it's placed in this groove here, and it's presented to the T cell which recognizes it. And if all the conditions for activation is met, the T cell will get activated, resulting in a very specific proliferation, very controlled proliferation. On the other hand, the superantigen does not enter the antigen presenting cell. What it does is, from outside, it links the MHC class 2 molecule with the T cell receptor. So you get a massive activation of the T cell, which is non-specific. So to give you an example, a normal antigen will activate 1 in 10,000 T cells, whereas super antigen can activate 1 in 5 T lymphocyte. So this results in an uncontrolled immune response and damage to the host tissue. So we have seen the different mechanisms by which autoimmune diseases arises. Now let's look at the difference between autoinflammatory diseases and autoimmune diseases. So historically, these diseases were thought to be because of problems in the adaptive immunity, but now we know that innate immunity problems can also give rise to similar diseases. And in this, you get a secretion of pro-inflammatory cytokines. So autoinflammatory diseases arise from defective innate immunity, resulting in secretion of pro-inflammatory cytokines. In contrast, autoimmune diseases have a problem with the adaptive immunity and the T cell response is defective. So naturally, in autoimmune diseases, you have an autoreactive or a self-reactive T cell and autoantibodies. Now, it's important to differentiate the two because the way we treat them would be slightly different. So in autoimmune diseases, you have to target the T and the B cells, whereas in autoinflammatory diseases, you have to give them anti-cytokine therapy, like the anti-TNF and anti-interleukin-1 therapy. So as we learn more and more about these diseases and their underlying immune mechanisms, we realize that some of these diseases lie in a spectrum of disease, starting with something that is autoinflammatory like the Blau syndrome. And you have the classic autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes and SLE. But many of the uveitis and autoimmune diseases we come across has a mixed pattern. It has both autoinflammatory and autoimmune component, like the ankylosing spondylitis, the psoriatic arthritis, and the Behçet syndrome. So in this session, you have learned how the immune system helps to differentiate between the self and the non-self and how it develops a central and the peripheral tolerance. You have also seen the different mechanisms through which the tolerance is lost, resulting in autoimmune diseases. And finally, you have learned the difference between autoinflammatory and autoimmune disease. I hope you have found this session useful. Thank you.